William Lai has been sworn in as Taiwan's sixth democratically elected president. In his inauguration speech, the new leader called on China to cease political and military intimidation, but vowed to pursue the status quo and defend the island's democracy. And China, which claims sovereignty over Taiwan, describes Mr. Lai as a dangerous separatist. And for more on our top story, we're joined by Dylan Loh, Assistant Professor, Public Policy and Global Affairs Division at Nanyang Technological University. Professor Loh, William Lai there in a speech that has a global audience and a domestic audience. But we saw him possibly, you suggest, giving some concessions to Beijing.
Right. In many ways, this was very much a status quo maintaining speech. He did not rock the boat and did not say anything that really would be cast as controversial. He did repeat the line of Hu Bu Li Shu from Tsai's earlier speeches, essentially articulating how both of the two polities are not subordinate to each other. In fact, most of his speech was far more focused on domestic. I think it's quite cautious, quite a safe speech, and he did extend a small olive branch of sorts by spelling out the areas of tourism and student exchanges, as well as the space on which political dialogue and the entry point towards normalization of political communication could begin. And to me, I think that even though the details have not been fleshed out now, I think that it's quite significant that he has identified this area. So it's a good start at the very least.
So a restart, a return to cross-Strait tourism, and as well as, I suppose, permission for students from mainland China to come and study in Taiwan. So that is William Lai's contribution to cross-Strait ties. But as you say, a big nod to predecessor Tsai Ing-wen. The Hu Bu Li Shu, that is, I suppose, 2021 addressing her people in October. She mentioned the four commitments. Our Taiwan correspondent mentioned that earlier as well. Hu Bu Li Shu is neither is subordinate to the other. So from Tsai Ing-wen to William Lai, is there the stress on continuity? Is there any change that you can see beyond this slight concession to Beijing?
I think that all the indications tell us that it is very much a status quo and a continuity. We just need to look at some of the cabinet movement. You have the former foreign minister, who is now the new Secretary General of the National Security Council, and the former National Security Council Secretary General becomes the defense minister. Former presidential aide as well as the new foreign minister. And of course, Xiao Biting is a very well-known and old hand. And this, to me, signifies very clearly continuity of Tsai's foreign and security policies, and it also brings greater predictability and a lot of experience, because these are all old hands in handling some of the most tricky foreign policy issues. In that way, it is very familiar territory for some of Taiwan's closest partners, including the US, which will be reassured in certain ways, because they have had a good working relationship with some of these personnel. So pair of steady hands, and this also indicates that the US and some of its European partners with Taipei and their relationship will probably be strengthened as well.
But Professor Loh, to repeat what has worked in the past, and if we look at former President Tsai, she had a lot of international support because they saw her as a steady, reliable, trusted, safe pair of hands to handle cross-Strait ties. But this is a different time. China rejected Tsai Ing-wen's inauguration speech in 2016. It has done the same with William Lai. It is not the same. China now is not the same as China 2016, nor is Taiwan the same, nor is the US the same. Using the same figures, using the same phrases almost. Is this the way for Taiwan to go?
Right. I think there are several points to it. First of all, we have to see how things unfold. It is just but one speech. We have to see what policies and how things develop under William Lai. What I will say is that the domestic configuration of Taiwan after the elections is a pretty good outcome, because none of the main political actors involved, be it Beijing or the three main parties that were contesting, got all of what they wanted. And this would mean for example, greater restraint because the DPP lost their majority in parliament, that would be a good thing for Beijing because the chances of anything extreme taking place would be checked by the legislative yuan. Likewise, not having, say, hypothetically, a KMT president together with a majority for the KMT as well would mean that the chances of politics and the chances of anything swinging too far either way is far more reduced. The likelihood, say, of a William Lai presidency doing something extreme and moving towards independence, for example, is very, very unlikely because there are very clear political restraints for him in doing so.
All right, let's look at those, what happened in the elections again. So we saw essentially the DPP getting a relatively weak mandate for William Lai. So from 2016, 56% of the vote, popular vote, 2020, 57%, and for William Lai, 40%. And you're saying that is a good thing because the KMT is checked and the DPP is checked at the same time. But possibly Beijing could look at this, the executive yuan, separate from the legislative yuan, and therefore drive divisions within government. We've seen Parliament, KMT throwing out some bills, amendment of bills on national security. Is that going to be difficult moving forward for the Lai administration?
Right. I actually think that having a KMT majority gives Beijing a valve or a conduit or a channel into political communication. If you look at some of the visits that have taken place, KMT in April led a small delegation to Beijing. We had former President Ma Ying-jeou, of course, going to Beijing in April as well. All of these moves seem to portend, at least from my point of view, that political communication, political channels are open. It is possible, but only on our terms. I mean, broadly, any sort of political communication is to be a positive thing, considering the overall atmosphere now that exists in cross-strait ties. Of course, whether or not Beijing essentially will have any sort of contact with the DPP government, I think we can only wait and see.
All right, final quick question here. What can we see in terms of concrete movement from Beijing to show perhaps it might be more prepared to talk to this new administration?
To my mind, that is pretty simple. If we do see a perceptibly reduced military activities over the median line, there are less visibly sustained number of a lowered number of flights or naval activities around the island, I think then we can say that, okay, at least militarily, they have stepped down some of these activities. And that could be, to my mind, one of the ways in which PRC could positively offer a small overture.
Oh, thanks so much for joining us this evening. Dylan Loh, Assistant Professor at Nanyang Technological University.